It's the inaugural record release from Discograffiti. Metal Machine Muzak is a slanted tribute to Lou Reed's divisive 1975 double LP Metal Machine music. Lester Bangs called it the greatest album ever made, but no matter how it hits you, it's always been the ultimate music freak secret handshake. My ambient reimagining features 4 16-minute 1-second tracks, just like the original, and each one was created by a top-shelf indie rock visionary. Lou Barlow from Dinosaur Jr. and Sebadoh, Corey Hansen from Wand, W. Cullen Hart from the Olivia Tremor Control, and Mark Robinson from Unrest. That's right, not a slouch in the bunch, unlike 99% of the compilations you've ever begrudgingly purchased for the one and only band on it you just had to hear. Metal Machine Muzak will not be available on streaming. The digital version is finally available for purchase, and the vinyl will be shipped this summer. Pre-orders for the LPs are available now, but they're going fast. They're being produced in a very limited edition run of 300 numbered 180-gram metallic silver double LP gatefold copies, only 100 of which can be ordered online. These copies will be numbered from 1 to 100, and they're first come, first served. To order either the digital or the vinyl, just head over to patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Don't miss out on Metal Machine Muzak, the ambient experience designed to make Brian Eno run screaming.
My only disappointment is that we got tied up with some business things that had to be settled, and in that period of time, Wayne got sick and went downhill very quickly, and then left us. And never got a chance to see this thing get released, and never got to hear these reviews or people like you talking about it in such a celebratory way.
My first emotion was just relief.
There are people who listen to music, and then there are those who've actually worshipped at the temple. You belong in the latter category, clearly. And some of the people that are listening to it, they're just listening to the album for what it is, and they're loving it, which just makes me so happy and so sad at the same time.
Right.
I wish more than anything that Brother Wayne was here to have this experience with me.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the Music Obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with the brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and with 4 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on the MC5, along with our special guest, producer Bob Ezrin. Here's just some of the many things Bob and I touch on in this podcast. Bob's work as the king of the rock opera, specifically on Lou Reed's Berlin, about which I was able to ask him a question I've been literally waiting to ask since I was 14 years old. This section is only available in the director's cut of this episode. The fascinating story of how this record started off as a Wayne Kramer film project and wound up transforming into an MC5 LP, plus a deep dive discussion about the brand new yet final MC5 record, Heavy Lifting. If you're an MC5 superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the director's cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features 10 additional minutes of essential material, and you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Or better yet, just subscribe for access to the complete versions of all our shows. I recommend the Lieutenant tier at the very least, so you can access those director's cuts, but the major tier's what you want, if you want it all, including, for you true music lovers out there, a guest-packed cornucopia of off-the-beaten-path episodes, and the more obscure the better. Even if you're on the fence, just head over there because it's finally free to become a basic member. Coming up, we've got a career-spanning interview with the Beatles' Pete Best, an interview with the Righteous Brothers' Bill Medley, Jenny Toomey on Tsunami's discography, Howard Jones on breaking into the music industry and his debut album, The Byrds' Gene Parsons, and a massive, many-guested launch into the Beach Boys' entire catalog. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then! I woke up this morning and found out I had COVID, but I got to tell you, I'm so excited about this interview that I barely even feel it right now.
Oh, man. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, God. You just got it?
Yeah, I got it literally this morning. I was fine last night.
Get on Paxlovid. You're still going to be sick, but you'll be sick a lot shorter and a lot less.
Yeah, but you know what? I have a family, so COVID equals vacation. I have a 5-year-old. If I was in jail, it would be a vacation. Today's guest is a record producer, arranger, and songwriter, in addition to working with a variety of other projects in digital media, live production, film, television, and theatrical production. He's worked on recordings with everybody and their mother, including Aerosmith, Pink Floyd, Phish, Alice Cooper, Kiss, Deep Purple, Lou Reed, Taylor Swift, Peter Gabriel, Rod Stewart, Nine Inch Nails, The Darkness, Jane's Addiction, Dr. John, Nils Lofgren, Berlin, Kansas, Julian Lennon, and Deftones, among many others. He's been described by Alice Cooper as, quote, our George Martin. Loyal Discograffiti soldiers will know without pause that if you say his name to me, it'll immediately conjure up 2 magic words, rock, opera. This gentleman is indisputably the king of the aforementioned, and my guess is if your collection of producer demo pitches doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end threaded into it, you'll have only earned a fraction of his producerial focus. Lads and ladies out there in the black-lit, lava-lamped basement man caves of the subterranean underground, it's the one and only Bob Ezrin.
Oh, my goodness. What an intro. By the way, a good song will move me anytime, I'll tell you. No, we don't need a beginning, middle, and end unless it's within the song itself.
Okay, good. That's good to know. But, honestly, the way that I fantasize about God for years, decades, is that, if a tape is presented to you and there's not a story that's involved with it, that you're only kind of half in it.
Thank you for that introduction. That was amazing. For me, song form is a story told to music. And whether it's a story that's told over 4 minutes or whether the story is told over 50 minutes, there still has to be a coherent point being made by the lyrics.
I am a 52-year-old man, and when I was maybe 14, 15, I had a question that was kind of on the forefront of my mind, and it's built up to this moment of my life where I am just dying to ask you. It's a potentially apocryphal story, but I would like to think that it's not. First of all, the flip side of Berlin, the second side, is possibly and probably the most beautifully depressing album side that's ever been made. And the song The Kids, did you actually make your kids cry for that track? The story, the apocryphal story is that I beat my children in order to get that performance. And the truth, as it often is far more mundane than that. But David, my oldest son, at the time, he was 5 and change, maybe 6. And Joshua, the baby, was only about 18 months old at the time. So I told David what the story was. And I didn't tell him the actual story. I didn't say somebody's killing themselves or any of that sort of stuff. But I'm just saying, come outside. And I had a little Nagra with me. Come outside, Dave. And Mommy's in the kitchen, and she can't hear you. And I want you to pound on the door and shout for Mommy until she comes. And if she doesn't come, then shout louder, and she'll come. And I'm recording it. He knew I was recording it. It wasn't like the first time he'd seen me recording things. So he knew that this was a performance. So he's pounding on the door and he's yelling for Mommy. And Joshua picks up on it. Joshua's 18 months standing next to his big brother who's yelling for Mommy. So Joshua starts yelling for Mommy. And that's the mommy, mommy, mommy stuff. The crying
is actually Joshua every night of his life from the time he was 6 months old until he was about 4, when we would say the magic words, bedtime. Joshua would, if you go, bedtime, Josh, it would be like, he'd start crying. So I recorded that.
Amazing.
But then when I get to it, I distorted the shit out of it. And, I just kept turning it up and up and up into the compressor, and it got more and more distorted, and it got more and more disturbing.
It's brilliant.
I actually had people run out of the control room.
It's one of the greatest production touches I've ever heard in my life. And every time I hear it, I get chills down my spine. It is so harrowing. And, I didn't care what the answer was. I just needed to know. My whole life, I just needed to know. I really did. What a moment for me. I appreciate the answer. I would like to move into heavy lifting.
Yes, please. Let's do it.
Right off the bat, I'd love to know how you came to work with the MC5. What was the germination point of your involvement with Wayne?
Well, so I got to Detroit to work with Alice Cooper in the fall of 1970. And they had a farm out in Pontiac, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. But they were very much a part of the Detroit music scene at the time. And one weekend they were playing at, I can't remember whether it was the Grandie or one of those great ballrooms in Detroit. MC5 were headliners on the bill. I got to watch them live. I knew who they were, of course, because the record Kick Out the Jams was famous. You see the show, and these whirling dervishes on stage, to watch that amazing energy, part of it revolutionary, part of it complete exhilaration, part of it funk, part of it punk, all of it political. It was, for me, a huge inspiration. It was a bit transformational. I loved who they were and what they were doing. And then, we would run into them from time to time, but I didn't really get to know them very well. And then fast forward many years, when Alice and I decided we were going to do a tribute project to Detroit, which started off as a project called Breadcrumbs and then led to the Detroit album. We started talking about who we knew and that we would enjoy working with. And Alice was the one who suggested, maybe we should do some writing with Wayne, which was thrilling to me because I had been such a fan. So then we got together to write, and it was literally like, going home to long-lost cousins or something like that. The three of us had such common cultural references and influences. Though I grew up in Toronto, I was very much influenced by and aware of everything that was happening in Detroit. That was the sort of closest place to this place in terms of its musical identity. And, although there was a lot more R&B in Detroit than there was here, but the R&B here was blue-eyed soul. But still, the influences were very similar. So, we get into a room together, we're laughing at the same jokes, we're telling the same stories, we're excited about the same ideas. It was really natural. And we invited Wayne to not only co-write on some of this stuff, but to actually be in the band as we recorded the project. So we got to spend a lot of time together, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. He was just coming out the other end from throat cancer. When we first started out, he was just regaining his strength and his legs. By the time we got through the Detroit project and everything, he was doing much better. And by the time we got to doing the MC5 project, he was in great shape. And his writing partner, Brad Brooks, the singer and lyricist on this stuff, on most of it, Brad Brooks was also a throat cancer survivor, as am I. So wow. The three of us, there was a little bit of common gratitude, for even being in the room in the first place.
Yeah.
That was the introduction. And then I got a call from Wayne asking me if I'd be interested in producing the music to a film that he was working on called Heavy Lifting. And you did the intro, so you know how partial I am to the idea of concept. He sent me the treatment for the film, and he sent me a bunch of material to listen to that he and Brad had written for this film. And I was the one who said, we could do this, but A, it's really tough to get a film made, as we all know. And so who knows how long it would take to have the vehicle to do it. But B, from my point of view, listening to the material, which was on the one hand, it was angry and socially conscious. On the other hand, it was defiant. On another hand, it was kind of funky. And then there were some songs that were actually fun, just fun, sort of party-ish. And I just said, why isn't this an MC5 project? And Wayne said at the time that he was slightly self-conscious about claiming the entirety of the original name. And since there was only him and Dennis left of the band, and Dennis was not well at the time, but I said something that moved him and sort of sealed the deal on the project, which is that from my point of view, given the state of the world, particularly the political climate in the United States, we're all MC5.
Yeah.
And if we're not, we're fucked.
Right.
You know, we need to be political. We need to be defiant. We need to be joyful. We need to celebrate what's great about the life we have, but we also need to fight against the things that are immoral or unjust in our world. And so from my point of view, we are all MC5, and therefore this should be an MC5 project. He loved that. And that changed the concept behind the record and defined how we would go about making it.
Oh, hi, I'm Dave Gebrow. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 5-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate weekly podcast for music obsessives thrive. But weekly wasn't enough for me, so I bumped it up to 4 shows a week. Becoming a subscriber to Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to hundreds of exclusive episodes. As a 2-show per week private, you get the weekly show by and for our Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a 3-show-a-week lieutenant, you'll get early release, ad-free, extended director's cuts of the main show. They're the shows as they were intended to be heard. Plus, you'll gain access to half the Patreon archive and the upcoming Beach Boys Behind the Mirror companion episodes, which will feature dozens of special guests from within the Beach Boys camp talking about and rating their music. But as a 4-show-per-week major, you'll be drowning in a flood of must-hear binge listening, because I'll be bombarding you with episodes about super cool bands that are too subterranean for free Fridays. It's like going to music college, but with a tuition that makes all kinds of sense. Plus, our entire Patreon archive is yours. Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off show, Queasy Listening, and the Private Press with Paul Major. And all that for the price of only a cup of coffee a week. Times are tough, you say? Fret not, because there's a $1 tier. Or you could just join as a basic member and buy episodes piecemeal from our Patreon shop. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Check out patreon.com/discograffiti to find the tier that's right for you. Once again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti. So did he then have a batch of material that has been stockpiling over the last 50 years? Or did you actually organically work with him face to face on a lot of these songs? And Brad?
Well, he and Brad had written a bunch of stuff. And I went to LA and sat with them in Wayne's studio and went through all the stuff that they had. A lot of it had been written for this film, but, you know, there were a fair number of songs also that they had worked on prior to that concept and everything. But they were all of a style and of an attitude. And whereas this is not, I don't think you would call this a concept record. It's not. But it is a record with an attitude and a point of view.
So are the lyrics, were they then rewritten once the idea of the film was abandoned? Or can you actually construct what this film would have been if you really invest yourself in the lyrics and try to pull them together?
No, I don't think you can construct a film from what we ended up with. But many of the lyrics were not completed. They were the beginnings of these songs, and in some cases, the actual lyric that's on the record now were, those things were written before I got there. And then I started to work with Brad a lot on refining the lyrics. Brad tends to be a little more poetic and looks for sometimes unusual ways of expressing certain things, and sometimes for me, the unusualness of it got in the way of the clarity of message, and so we worked on that. But that didn't happen a whole lot, and mostly, things like black boots on the ground, come on. What a great phrase, and even the phrase heavy lifting, how are we going to do it? Actually, within the song heavy lifting is the story of the film.
I had Tom Morello on the show and, had a great time with him talking about the record. We actually talked about the entire discography. But I think that even just starting right there with Heavy Lifting, as soon as it kicks in, I have to be honest, as a huge fan, going back to when I was a teenager, I was nervous putting it on because, like Big Star's record from the 2000s, it just kind of is this awkward addition to the legacy. But from the moment it kicks in, I really was of the mind that it was the most successful possible modernization of the MC5 for current times. Could not be any more apt. I mean, you've described the record as there being a little bit of heavy metal. I actually think there's more than a little bit, but the blend of metal and punk, that line that you walk between the two, to me is the beautiful tension of the record.
Well, thank you for saying that, because thank you. That's very intentional. That wasn't an accident, and it's something that Wayne and I talked about, in how we were going to deal with the sound of this thing and the instrumental approach. I mean, we had demos to work off of, but they were in some cases quite different from what we ended up with on the album. In a couple of cases, you had the riff and you just kind of went, okay, well, the song has just told us what it wants to be, and now we're just going to, we're going to take that and make it slightly better. A Heavy Lifting was one of those. We had that amazing riff.
And Barbarians at the Gate, too.
Well, Barbarians at the Gate is fantastic. Yeah. I mean, I love the record. I'm so thrilled that people are reacting the way they are to it. They're not poo-pooing it, and they're not saying that it's an unfair representation or any of this other stuff. They're just enjoying the spirit of this record because it's meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be enjoyed, but provocative at certain moments and sometimes inspirational. At the end of the day, it's meant to make you want to get up and dance,
Yeah.
Which was what the MC5 made you want to do. Like, while they were telling you all about the evils of the war movement in the United States, they were also getting you on your feet and, getting you up and inspiring you, all that amazing youthful energy. I was hoping that we would be able to do that again, even though we're not the same kids we were then, but we still have the same aspirations, and we do, to a certain extent, have that same essential energy. I will say Wayne, during the making of this thing, was at the top of his game. I've seen him play for decades from a distance, and then very close up on the Alice Cooper stuff, and very close up in the 70s. But this time, man, he's masterful. He is absolutely in complete control of his acts, of the sound of it, the story that it tells, the pocket, everything. He's right on it. And then, when we were trying to figure out, like, okay, well, so who's going to play on this thing? I mean, obviously we wanted Dennis. Dennis was able to do 2 songs. I'm eternally thankful for that, especially given that he didn't survive much longer after that.
And also, one of the 2 tracks that you put him on was, I felt, a really inspired choice that kind of goes against type, because Blind Eye is kind of a ballad, and, the fact that it's moving and it works and is not Air Supply, it's a really powerful, reflective look back. And, it's only one of the 2 tracks that he's on.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It really is.
Yeah. It just seemed the juxtaposition of it would be very dramatic. So I was really glad that he liked it and that he was willing to do it.
Yeah, it was, I think, an extremely inspired choice there. It must have been on your mind, and certainly on Wayne's, that they haven't released a single album in the entire time you've been in the business. So did he have stress about the intensity of his own expectations of himself?
Yes. Well, I think that was why, when I first said, I think this is an MC5 project, it's for those 2 reasons. One is because they hadn't made a record since before I started in the business, and I regretted that for years. I mean, that was one reason. But, the second reason was that what he was playing for me just had that spirit. Now, I didn't put it side by side with the, original music, because I don't want to do that. I don't. When we're making a new project, I don't want to go back and look at other stuff that the artist has done. It can color what I'm about to do, and I wanted to come at this fresh. But in my recollection, the vibe of it was very similar to what I recall of the experience of seeing MC5 play. So that's why I said, this is an MC5 record. But of course he was self-conscious about it, because it hadn't happened. They hadn't done anything for 50 years. Over 50 years. And, was it the right thing to do? Did he have the right to take the mantle of MC5 and apply it to this project and so on? But it became the other way around. What happened was we applied the project to the MC5 ethos. We took what they had started and picked out the MC5-ishness of it, the MC5 bits of it, and that became the sort of backbone of the record. And then we added some more. And we had people, Don was on bass. Come on. As Detroit, and in terms of bona fides, nobody has greater than Don as a Detroit countercultural musician. He may not have been in MC5, but he probably should have been. He was just a little younger. Yeah. And Abe Laboriel Jr., who has been a friend of mine for many years. The reason why I felt Abe would be great for the project is because his musical background, the confluence of styles and genres in his musical background are exactly what was happening at Detroit at the time. So he was going to get it. He was going to get it right off the bat, and he did. And when we tracked the record, we did 15 songs in 4.5 days with Wayne, Don, and Abe as the band, and having Brad sing live in the studio. And it just came together with such amazing energy and intelligence and craft and inspiration. It was a really wonderful experience.
How long from beginning to end did the whole project take then?
Oh, there was a ton of mix down and overdubbing to be done, but the initial tracking was done in 4.5 days.
That's amazing.
And those performances, and the performances, the bass and guitar parts and the drum parts that were played during those sessions survived, and that's the basis of the record. And then we just added stuff to it, as you do. You go into overdub mode, and we added some other friends and colleagues, who also, belonged under that umbrella of We Are All MC5, who were, people who were revolutionary in spirit.
Here's what I love about the guest spot. There's a bunch of people kicking in to this record, a lot of really talented people, and there's no showboating. There's nothing where it seems like somebody's trying to leap out of the record and be seen. It's all for the spirit of heavy lifting. Not one moment where it feels like that kind of ego taking over.
Well, I think in every case of the contributors to the record, there's such respect and in some cases even reverence for Wayne that pretty much everybody considered it to be an honor to work on the project. And so that sort of superseded any possibilities of showboating or egotistical flash playing. Everybody wanted to serve the project, and everybody really wanted to do well by their brother Wayne.
One of the interesting things about their very brief but incredible, almost perfect discography is that even though they really have that one vibe, every record is very different, from the politically infused proto-punk of the first one to the more attenuated, Landau, it's almost like a David Bowie Raw Power kind of production where a lot of people think it was neutered because of the drop out of the bass, but it did kind of create that CBGB punk sound. And then the third one is kind of like a gritty, harrowing Exile on Main Street straight up rock record. So to go in and mess around, quote unquote, with the legacy, there is no one legacy. There's 3 legacies. So for you to actually end the record beautifully with a P-Funk party on Hit It Hard, it's like, it's just another aspect or slice of the prism for the legacy.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you got that. That's really great. I mean, there was a point at which Hit It Hard was a question mark. Was never a question mark in my head, but Wayne was not completely happy with it until we got the final sax on it, which was that sort of freeform jazz element that for him, it elevated it from being a kind of Tower of Power. I'm not dissing Tower of Power. They were absolutely brilliant. But where it was just sort of funk and formulaic funk, this took it into another territory for Wayne and really excited him. And that was great.
That Coltrane Sun Ra thing that takes it full circle.
Exactly.
It's definitely an odd way to go out. No one's going to say it's not an odd way to go out, but what it leaves me with is the Five never did anything according to anyone else's script. From Fuck Hudson's, sort of their own self-immolation off the back of that first record to the very end. And even though this record is so hard, I mean, the way that you record the drums and the guitar, they're leaping out of the speakers. But the more I listen to it, and I've heard it over 20 times, the more I listen to it,
wow,
the more it feels like I can almost visualize Wayne being overcome with emotion while making the record. Obviously, now in retrospect, after Wayne and Dennis have passed, it is an experience where one is overcome with emotion as a fan. But how about while making it? Were there really emotional moments outside of the stress of living up to the legacy?
Yeah, when the stress of living up to the legacy only lasted a few moments at the very beginning. And once we got going, that dissipated and didn't raise its head again, because we realized we were onto something and we were really enjoying the thing that we were onto. And then when we got to the point of, mixing, and I started sending the mixes to Wayne, he got so excited. He was just so thrilled by it and so happy with the record. And, I had no idea that he wasn't going to be here.
Yeah.
After it was all done. And I was just looking forward to the next chapter, okay, next thing, we're going to take this on the road. And then after that, we're going to do another one. Of course we are, because it was so enjoyable and exciting and so fulfilling at the end. When you finish a project, you really hope that at the very end, when you play it all back, everybody is happy, at least mostly happy. You can't always satisfy everybody exactly, but I like to, one of the things that I feel best about within my career is that most of the time everybody's happy. That's rare. That's what I really strive for. I want everybody to be excited, and I want them to really enjoy it, own it, and love it. And most of the time that's true. Every once in a while, not so much. But this one, Brad was thrilled, Wayne was thrilled. I'm very happy with the end result. So there was nothing on there that I feel self-conscious about or wish we could have done differently. I'm totally satisfied with the product. And my only disappointment is that we got tied up with some business things that had to be settled. And in that period of time, Wayne got sick and went downhill very quickly and then left us and never got a chance to see this thing get released, and never got to hear these reviews or people like you talking about it in such a celebratory way.
My first emotion was just relief, just abject relief.
There are people who listen to music, and then there are those who've actually worshipped at the temple. You belong in the latter category, clearly. And some of the people that are listening to it, some of the interviews that I'm doing and stuff, they don't really know enough of the history, or if they know it as history. They haven't really lived it. So they're just listening to the album for what it is, and they're loving it. People are loving it, which just makes me so happy and so sad at the same time.
Right. It is really bittersweet.
Because I wish more than anything that Brother Wayne was here to have this experience with me.
And they're going to be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame posthumously now, unfortunately.
I know.
It's really sad. And, I remember very recently reading in Mojo that this record was coming. And then it seemed like a couple weeks later he had passed.
Yeah, exactly.
So as the release encroaches and it comes out October 18th, buy it, don't stream it, just buy it. As it encroaches, is there a go-to image or moment that you had with Wayne that personally, just as a huge fan, can take solace in and kind of remember along with you, while you were working with him?
It was when he got his, and I'm going to say it's the wrong model because I'm not a car guy, but he got a Dodge muscle car. I think it was like a Charger, but on steroids. But it was certainly a Dodge muscle car that got delivered. I guess there had been some problems with it, and it got delivered again to the studio while we were working. And Wayne the Kid comes bounding out of the studio to this car and just is loving all over it. And you can see the level of excitement and passion and youthful energy and all that stuff. And it's just for that, you know, in that one moment in the parking lot outside of the studio on 3rd Street in LA, I saw the essence of Wayne Kramer. You know, he was just glowing. He was gushing all over this amazing work of brilliant engineering and Detroit ingenuity, you know, and muscularity and masculinity and all that stuff all at the same time, which is very much like this record.
That's beautiful. I appreciate that, and I'm going to keep it in mind as I continue listening to it. I want to thank you for all the work you put into this. I can hear the work. It's all in there. And I know that after those 4 days that you were slaving over this thing, it's quite apparent. I got to say, probably my 3 or 4 favorite songs are Heavy Lifting, Barbarians at the Gate, Edge of the Switchblade, Boys Who Play with Matches. Yeah, those are probably my 4 favorite songs. And then the absolute height of the record, where it just does not get any more powerful, is during Barbarians at the Gate. That chorus, the banging on the door, banging, is just...
I know.
So good.
Well, that's Brad Brooks there, buddy. And Brad deserves a tremendous amount of credit for the vocal performances and all those harmonies and things. Like, he did a masterful job as well.
Yeah.
You know, because Wayne is past, and Wayne is more famous than Brad, and therefore gets a little more attention. But Brad, you know, he has to get credit for fronting this thing in a, you know, truly powerful, unique, consistent, appropriate, and modern way.
Yeah. Is there any plan? Because as far as the live experience goes, I don't know if anything could be done, but I remember reading in that Mojo article.
I don't know.
That's it?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I think that, you know, this is in Margaret's hands, and obviously, you know, she's still reeling from the loss of the love of her life, you know, her husband and her artist. And so I just don't know. I don't know what she's thinking about this, and I won't even ask. At some point, if this generates something and it needs my help, I'm there in a minute.
Well, you know, obviously it would be difficult, but part of me is just kind of dying to hear this stuff, you know, as a celebration of what was, because it'll never die.
Maybe somebody can put a bug in Morello's ear or something. You know, maybe Morello wants to put together a little tribute something to Wayne with Brad and Stevie Salas and Vicky, and, you know, maybe Don Was and stuff. Who knows? I don't know. I haven't heard anything about future plans except for the release of the record.
So as a guy who knows what he's doing, and with the first 3 records being so wildly different in feel and approach, if you had produced the first 3 records, is there anything you would have done to have, you know, tweaked them in a big way?
I didn't, and therefore it doesn't matter. No. They're perfect. They're fantastic. They're perfect.
Do you have a favorite album on which you've worked, or I guess more specifically, the one that you've gone back to listen to the most?
I don't. I rarely look backwards. Every once in a while, somebody interviews me like you and asks me about stuff, and then that's the time I have to think about it, but I don't naturally think about it. So I love today, and I love what I'm doing, you know, right now, and love my life, and I'm thankful for all of it, and looking forward to a whole bunch more.
You're really blessed. I mean, you're still doing work that's as vital as what you were doing back in 72.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
Before I let you go here, I just want to let you know that my Patreon for Discograffiti, the subscribers are called Soldiers of Sound, and they're all ranked, you know, private, lieutenant,
yes,
major, and I'll give you one guess what that's modeled after. The Kiss Army.
Yeah, no kidding. That's great.
Yeah.
That's really great. Thanks for this. This was a really good interview. I really enjoyed it. Feel better.
Thank you. All right, that about does it. If you enjoyed this episode, then please Venmo Gebro. I repeat, Venmo Gebro at David-Gebro, that's Gebroe, or PayPal at my email address, which is davidbgebro@gmail.com. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 5-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Stay tuned, because next week we've got Howard Jones in a very special interview about his 12-year road to overnight success. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then come Monday, it's an off-the-beaten-path Discograffiti episode for our major tier. Special guest Corbin Betleon joins me in a discussion about the Chesapeake Jukebox Band, one of the most floridly produced post-Sgt. Pepper records of the 1960s. Except, unfortunately for them, it actually came out in 1972. And that's unfortunate because by then, a record like that didn't stand a snowball's chance in hell. You really got to admire the balls, though. The Chesapeake Jukebox Band's one and only album came and went so quickly, it was almost as if it never actually happened. Come Monday, we'll give you all the proof you need that it did indeed happen. And then on Wednesday, the Lieutenant tier get their early release, ad-free, super extended director's cut of the Howard Jones interview. And then come Friday, the rest of you penny pinchers get to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Bob Ezrin, Shannon Cosgrove and Surefire Media, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, Jay Schultz, Cream Magazine, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator, and much, much more. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the skull-crushing world of punk and hard rock is to leap headfirst into my interview with Mike Watt rating the Minutemen. That's episodes 124 to 126. My interview with Testament's Alex Skolnick, 122 to 123. David Pajo rates Slint, that's 100 and 101. Andrew Tuttle rates the Monks, that's 74. Randy Randall rates the Jesus Lizard, that's 70 to 71. Jim Florentine rates Black Sabbath, that's 64 to 68. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground, that's 32 and 33. Nirvana, that's episode 30. Bob Mayer rates The Replacements, that's 28 and 29. Pixies is number 18, and Van Halen is 9. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, November 1st, we're coming at you with Howard Jones and his 12-year road to overnight success. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!